Vegan.
1, 2,
3.
Welcome to the Vegan123 Show with me, Berty Justice, going out online at soundartradio.org.uk or 102.5 FM if you are in the Totnes area. Today's show, I have a lovely guest with me, and her name is Abbie Woodbridge. Hello, Abbie.
Hi.
Abbie is a filmmaker and an educator and many other things as well. How's it going, Abbie?
Yeah, it's going really well, actually. I'm very busy. I've got a lot going on, but it's going well. I'm still studying my master's in wildlife biology and conservation, which I absolutely love. I'm still doing Animal Educate, which is going really, really well, slowly but surely. And I'm still doing my documentary, Wolves Unmasked. It's finished. So at the moment it's with my sound guy. And so that should be coming back pretty soon. And yeah, I'm still teaching full time as well. And lots of things in between all of those things. So yeah, very busy.
That's really cool and really, really positive. And so today's show, we're going to explore those different things, those different sort of areas that you're sort of combining into your specialisms. But first of all, I'd like to find out about your vegan journey. So if you'd like to talk a little bit about that first.
Yeah, sure. My vegan journey is actually really important, I think, for many people that are actually thinking about becoming vegan. I've always loved animals. Ever since I was young, I would have books, loads of stuffed teddies. I was obsessed. And then when I was about 10, I produced multiple projects about whales and dolphins. I was completely obsessed with them. And I wanted to be a marine biologist. So I always had this very deep love of the animal kingdom. And then teenage years hit and I turned into a stroppy teenager. So all that kind of went out the window. But I still loved animals. I always had that love there. And then I knew a few vegans, and two in particular were very close to me. And they obviously saw that hypocrisy in a way, the fact that I loved animals, but I was still eating them. And they were kind of trying to prompt me now and again. And then they finally got me to watch Earthlings with Forks Over Knives. Now, bearing in mind, I couldn't even watch nature documentaries with the sort of predator-prey dynamic. I just couldn't even go anywhere near that because it would traumatize me. So watching Earthlings just was a whole nother level of trauma. And I went vegan overnight, and yeah, it was quite interesting because I was vegan for about 8 months, and then I went back to eating chicken, fish, and dairy products, and which is very odd when I think of that now, because I often think, well, how did I go back? How did I go back to eating animals? And I could make all the excuses under the sun and say, well, I was having a really bad time. But when I think about those 8 months of being vegan, yes, I was a strict vegan, but I probably wasn't as connected, and I hadn't gone through an awakening as such. It was almost like, okay, I was traumatized and I instantly made a decision to go vegan, and I didn't really do anything other than change my diet and obviously not use animal products. But then when I went back to eating animals, it was really odd because for about another year or two, I kind of just suppressed it and put it in a place somewhere. And then for some reason, I just started, I don't know what triggered it, but I just started thinking about animals all the time. I went vegan again, but it was different this time. It was completely different because I had this really dark period of my life. I was in a very horrible place. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to be here anymore because of what was happening to animals, because I couldn't cope with it. And it's almost like I was whatever had been blinding me before was completely lifted, and going vegan wasn't enough for me. I just couldn't cope with existing. I felt like I owed my life to animals. And I still do. I still feel that way. So going vegan and then going into activism was an awakening for me, and it was a process. And I started learning, I started researching, I started advocating, outreach, and yeah, I almost feel like I wasn't who I am today before veganism, who I was supposed to be. I wasn't me prior to being vegan, and I feel like now I am who I am supposed to be. And I feel like my purpose is to advocate for animals in lots of different ways. So yeah, that's my vegan journey. But I think it's so important because of conditioning's just really hard to unravel, isn't it? And if you think about anyone that knows me now, they know I would never go back to eating animals, but I did then. And I think it's just that conditioning is just so powerful, and the way it's unraveled is different for everyone, and the process is different for everyone. Some people go vegan like that and they don't ever go back. Some people it takes a lot longer, you know. But yeah, like I said, it's definitely, it's who I am.
No, that's awesome. And it kind of, from my perspective, there's two things that have jumped out, and that is the power of conditioning and how invisible it is. We live in the UK where people treat dogs and pigs differently, but that's not on a biological level, that's on a conditioning level. But we don't, what I'm trying to say is that there's invisible conditioning all around us, and it takes us as human beings a while to break out of that. And the thing, what I connect with you when you're talking is that veganism just makes a lot of sense. It like to not hurt others. That for me, that's my like default way of living, and that kind of comes across from you as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. I don't view animals as inferior in any way, shape, or form. I mean, even when it comes to things like if some people don't like their dog on the sofa or the bed, and I get why, but for me, I'm like, I don't want him to feel like I view him
separate.
any different. No, he's an equal, and I view every single animal, every life form out there really is equal, and we all have different roles and different purposes and what have you, but why should some forms be more important than others? And that's just how I feel, and that's how I try to live my life now in every way.
Awesome. And veganism's allowed you to make that connection with your positive life.
Yeah, veganism was it's the birth of so many different things for me. It opened so many doors, and yeah, it's part of something so much bigger, I think, is what I was trying to say before. It's massive, isn't it? It's not just about what people see on the surface of what veganism is. There's so much more to it. There's so many different levels of who you are as a person, and veganism, it almost, for me, it sort of dredged that up. So I've got so much to be thankful for, because I'm so happy that some people say to me, wouldn't you rather be ignorant and just carry on in this robotic like manner? Absolutely not. 100% no.
I'd rather be awake with this craziness going on than be sort of asleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Have you got a tune that you'd like to play as your first song?
Yeah, could you play Pink, A Million Dreams?
So what made you choose that song, Abbie?
That song's really important to me because, well, it's exactly what I do pretty much every night. I lie in bed thinking of a world where animals aren't suffering, and it's important because that's how this is going to happen. That's how change is made. All of us come together, a million dreams, collectively, and yeah, where it's kind of the brightest colours fill my head, and I do dream of that world so often, and I want it so bad, So when I listen to it, it makes me feel a bit better because it's very positive, it's uplifting, and ultimately it's about, not the song, but for me, from my perspective, listening to it, it's about all of us coming together and ending animal suffering
and animal exploitation. Yeah, that's cool. That's good. That's one thing that's sort of jumping out at me is that if we do nothing, nothing changes. But if we do something, then things can change.
Exactly. I think apathy is just the most dangerous thing in the world, where people can just sit back and let things happen. And hopefully with the animal rights movement and various other social movements, I think we're going to start to see change. Well, we are seeing change, aren't we? We are seeing rapid change, but it's just not fast enough.
No, but the positive to sort of remind ourselves is that change is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Following on from your vegan journey, I was just wondering, just for the listeners out there, just as a helpful tool to them, what are sort of your like go-to vegan meals that you have in your like arsenal?
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's so many, but I do I do love chickpeas. So I tend to, chickpeas are probably my go-to for ingredient. I love chickpeas with anything. Chickpeas on jacket potato. I'm actually not so big on hummus.
Oh no,
no, but I would much rather just a tin of chickpeas or dried chickpeas, obviously cooked, and just make my own mix. And I love curry, and I find curry is really kind of easy to make. So that's probably my go-to meal for what I would enjoy the most, probably with salad and anything chickpea related is probably.
That's cool. I just thought I'd give the listeners a bit of an insight why you laughed about hummus, because I haven't spoken about this on the show before, but I love hummus. Like literally, like hummus is my go-to. So that just gives a bit of context as to why Abbie sort of mentioned that. So you said chickpeas, and that's do you have any sort of desserts that you would also go to?
Do you know what? I don't really have a sweet tooth. I've never really liked dessert. I do now and again. I mean, I tried, my dad is vegan, and he told me to try the vegan Magnum. So I tried one the other day, and I couldn't believe how amazing it was, because actually, even before I was vegan, I never really used to eat ice cream much, but the Magnums I didn't really like. But these are just really, really amazing. But yeah, I think my go-to, because there's so many meals, it's hard to actually pick a few out. So I've just picked out my favorite foods, and I think chickpea curry and just anything chickpea related is probably my go-to, because it's just such an easy, yummy ingredient to use for everything, you know.
With the Magnums, did you have the almond or did you have the original?
I think it was the mint.
Okay, because I definitely, like, the reason I say is because I had the almond ones last night and they're amazing.
I don't think it was almond. I think it might have been the original, actually. I don't think it was mint. But it was absolutely, really, really nice. But it's amazing because there's so many products now, isn't there?
Yeah, it's endless. We don't know them all. There's too many.
I don't ever spend too much shopping, ever. Honestly, I feel like my shopping bill is much healthier than it was before.
Oh yeah. Because we're integrating more fruits and vegetables, and learning about how to cook with lentils or chickpeas or other pulses and stuff.
It's just so easy.
Oh yeah, but I've talked about this on the show before. It is so easy, but for outsiders or people who aren't, they perceive it as complicated and stressful. But the actual doing is easier than the thinking about it.
Yeah, I guess it's at the beginning when you don't know. Yeah, it's you're going to perceive it as complicated, but when you do have even just a couple of ingredients that you can integrate into everything, it's fine. It's probably the question I get asked the most, though, is what do you eat on your vegan diet? And you know, like there's nothing else other than animal products, and I just have lists and lists now of kind of recipes, and I I photograph my food as well. I don't tend to put it much on social media. Now and again, if I've been bombarded with questions about it, but I make sure I've got a collection that I can show people and just say, right, okay, here you go, here's what I eat.
To show that it's possible, because if they don't know, or they're they're unknowing of the options out there.
Exactly.
And I think also with people we know, I think it's easier when you know somebody that's vegan, opposed to like if you just Googled veganism and you just like find a load of random people. Once you know the people who are vegan, it becomes more relatable.
Yeah, definitely. It's really nice, or better, to have a support network initially.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And even like I try to say, anyone who eats, like, you know, if they're pescatarian or vegetarian, to spend more time with those friends who, you know, understand and sort of change their diets accordingly, if that makes sense. You mentioned earlier some of the things that you're involved with. I was just wondering what inspired you to create Wolves Unmasked?
I've always loved fantasy, and as I was growing up, all the classic fantasies, films, books, Labyrinth, Neverending Story, Legend, they kind of molded me into who I am today to an extent. And the wolf was always this mystical, magical figure, often villainized, and I was always just totally captivated. And especially when it came to werewolves as well, I was just obsessed for a long time, which was very weird probably to a lot of my friends. But when I actually met a wolf face to face, I went to a zoo to kind of investigate some claims that we'd had, and I saw these wolves, and my heart just broke into a million pieces, and it was just awful. It was horrible. And it's in a way, and I know it might sound a bit odd and a bit fluffy to some people, but it's kind of like they spoke to me in a way, and it was almost like I had to be a voice for them in some way or another. I had to do something. I had to. And I mean, it's awful to see any animal in captivity. It's awful. It's a horrible experience, but it was almost like something shifted, and that was the birth of the documentary, definitely. But I kind of, I guess, saw the wolf as a wolf, a wild creature behind bars, a wolf being the very definition of wild, behind bars. And if you think about a wolf's territory, a wolf's habitat is they roam, they travel extensively, and it was just a lot of realizations again. And I knew I had to do something, so I decided, not just for those 3 wolves at the zoo, for all wolves, I decided to make the documentary. And it was only supposed to start actually as a 5-10 minute short film.
Oh really?
Yeah, it just because I was when I research, I really go for it. And the more I was finding out, the more people I wanted to talk to. And then, you know, I would conduct an interview, and they would say, oh, why don't you speak to so and so, or why don't you speak to so and so. So before I knew it, I had sort of 10-15 interviewees. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing really that it's kind of grown to that extent, because it's feature length now. So
awesome.
Yeah, but that's what started it. I've always had this amazing admiration, this love of wolves, and obviously my dog as well. I was always looking for those connections. I always wanted to know about his ancestors. So there's lots of things that inspired me, but I think the actual birth of the documentary started in the zoo when I met those 3 wolves.
That is something that I haven't talked about in other shows, but is really crazy that we take animals and we put them behind bars so that humans can go and look at them.
Yeah, it's odd, but again, it's going back to conditioning. It's going back to, that's what people know. If you think at a very young age, you know, your parents or your guardians take you to the zoo to view the animals, and if you look at any children's illustrations when it comes to the zoo, anything like that, anything related to the zoo, it's all very happy and lovely. So you've got that conditioning to deal with, and you've also got the fact that zoos, a lot of the time, I'm not saying every zoo, but a lot of the time they hide behind conservation. They wear it as a mask, and unfortunately people don't ask questions, people don't see that. And unless you're like, I guess like us, where we do ask those questions, it's just dismissed, unfortunately. But it's horrible, because I mean, when you see animals in captivity, it does destroy you, doesn't it? I mean, it's horrid. And when you see other people at the zoo, you know, they're just completely, I mean, they're all happy. Everyone's there to have a good time and to have fun, you know, and these animals are just being exploited left, right and centre, and these people are just completely unaware.
So for the listeners today, we're now going to play Abbie's trailer for Wolves Unmasked.
Do we have the right to control the world? Do we have a right to dominate it? Do other life forms matter?
I think it's extremely arrogant and short-sighted for us to create such a huge meat industry at the expense of nature.
These people came with their domesticated animals, and they brought with them the image of the wolf as an evil creature.
There have been a lot of stories in literature making out that wolves are the big bad beast.
It's propaganda in so many cases by people who really hate wolves.
They are the most malign creature ever, with entire cultures, demonization centered around their history.
The wolf is a real challenge. It's a real challenge for us, I think, because there's a long history of mistrust, a human history of mistrust.
Human-wildlife conflicts are usually about human-human conflicts, but they focus on an animal.
You know, the wolf issue became an issue about politics and not science.
The objective was to kill them all off, and that was the policy for centuries.
The protection on it just doesn't seem to be a priority compared to other species.
One thing we have to acknowledge is how much of a part of our lives wolves already are. They've had a great impact on our culture, on our language, and their absence is having an impact on our physical landscape.
The United Kingdom, though it looks very, very green from the sky, is incredibly barren.
Are we just going to use the world as our taking and convert all the land to agriculture and farmland to raise animals, or we are going to share it with other creatures?
There's something there that's very ancient, very precious when it comes to our relationship with a wolf.
So that was the trailer from Wolves Unmasked, and what's come to me is I'm wondering about there's lots of people that you've interviewed in the documentary. Are there any that have sort of like had massive like effects on you, or like sort of more memorable ones than others?
Well, every single interviewee offered something really amazing. That's the thing. They all did exactly what I wanted them to do, and it's almost like it was a jigsaw puzzle, and there was lots of missing pieces when I started out, and each of those interviewees just kind of slotted in somewhere, so each was just as valuable. And I mean, even someone that I interviewed that I wasn't planning on interviewing ended up being probably one of the most valuable interviews ever for me, even outside of the documentary. So it's quite amazing how it happened, because it was just, again, like a jigsaw puzzle. That's how I view the documentary. Every time I interviewed someone, then something else would pop up, whether that would be another issue, so a learning experience for me, or, oh, you should speak to so-and-so, they've got a lot of knowledge in that area. And so I would just constantly be batted around, and it was brilliant, really. Each was memorable in its own way. And I mean, a lot of the interviews were obviously via Skype, because a lot of the interviews, obviously, that abroad, we don't have wolves in the UK, and a lot of the issues that I was looking at, or there was a lot of the experts and specialisms were all over in the States. So so each was memorable and had equal value, definitely.
Wolves Unmasked started first, and then you mentioned about Animal Educate. Could you give us a sort of a bit of a sort of an intro to what that is and how that started?
Animal Educate is a channel on YouTube which specialises in animal behaviour, animal science, conservation, and Rewilding is probably leading Animal Educate at the moment. But it's amazing for me because it means that I get to pour my whole skill set into one place, and I've always wanted to do it. Because of my love of animals, obviously, and because I even when I wrote my business plan for Lupine Media, I said I wanted to do educational videos, short educational videos, using YouTube as a platform. It was kind of the top of the list, but I've never really had the opportunity to explore that until the first lockdown, because filmmaking was always closer to my heart, and the topics and the areas that I was looking at, it kind of fell into filmmaking, not short videos. Well, as I said, Wolves Unmasked started as a shorter film, but not necessarily an educational video. So Animal Educate just seemed to tick those boxes for me. It just means that I can be an animal advocate. I'm a teacher, I'm a filmmaker, I'm studying a master's in wildlife biology and conservation. So it's almost everything walks hand in hand, everything goes together really nicely. And it's constantly evolving. That's what I love about it. And with the engagement and where it's going, and it's just a journey. It's just a big journey for me. I absolutely love it. I would love to be able to do it full time one day. But for now, I'm very happy with Animal Educate.
Awesome. So this is kind of the beginnings of something, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. It's, like I said, it's constantly evolving. I started it, about 6 months ago, something like that. And it's changing all the time. And I have to respond to audience to some extent, but I'm always still doing what I absolutely love, you know.
Awesome. It's great that you found something that you're passionate about and you can sort of express your creativity through and reach other people.
Yeah.
Would you like to play another track?
Yeah. Could you play Nickelback, We Stand Together?
So with that tune, why did you choose it?
I like that song because, again, it's about standing together, coming together. It's about lots of voices becoming one, and it's not necessarily about animals. It's just about people coming together, because ultimately that's how change is made.
So it's like a unity.
Yeah, exactly. And I love Nickelback.
Yeah, so it's a bit of both, a bit of about positive unity and liking Nickelback at the same time.
Yeah.
With Animal Educate, you mentioned about rewilding. Could you sort of explain what that is for some people?
Yeah, sure. Rewilding is very important, and to put it quite simply, because rewilding means different things to different people, to put it simply, it enables natural processes to repair and restore ecosystems, land and sea. And the benefits are just absolutely astounding. They're astounding. And it's a lot of people know rewilding to be just throwing predators back into a landscape and letting them roam. And yes, okay, that's part of it to some extent. That's part of it. But rewilding is so much more than that. And that's why I'm a big believer. When it comes to the UK, even just the UK, we're known to be one of the most nature-deprived countries. which is devastating, really. After the devastation of war, we were scared, and we were scared of starvation, and we started to see that fallow land is wasteland. So we decided, well, I think it was the late 1960s, we, with our specialised farming, we just completely obliterated, well, nature, grasses, wildlands, wildlife habitats, and we're still obviously doing that today at an alarming rate. It's unbelievable, really. So rewilding is about kind of reversing that, but it's difficult because you, as individuals, you can't want what you've never had. I mean, we don't actually know, especially in the UK, we don't know what it's like to have real wild nature. We have this whole sort of patchwork of green, and it's like a big pretty garden, which is lovely, but that's not actually what we're supposed to have.
A lot of it's constructed, isn't it? It's human constructed wildlife per se.
Yeah, and it's because of that we've become quite biophobic, and we don't really have any predators, and we don't really tolerate these animals. I mean, look at foxes, look at how we treat foxes, look at how we treat badgers, you know, and we've just, it's again, take mentality, and we need to learn to give a bit. We need to learn to let animals take a bit. We need, because there's just so much conflict with nature. There's so much conflict with wildlife. So rewilding is very much about us as individuals as well, connecting with nature, and how, because ultimately we are nature. We are. And we've lost that. And that's what rewilding means to me. It's about, again, everyone coming together and making decisions. It's not just about one or two people making decisions, because ultimately rewilding does impact everyone. Some more than others. When you look at landowners and farmers, granted that their livelihood is going to be impacted. So there's going to be massive conflict there. So they need to work. Everyone needs to work together to come up with the right way forward. And so to put it simply, as I said at the beginning, rewilding is about restoring and repairing ecosystems.
Following on from the environment, why do you think more and more environmentalists are advocating a plant-based diet? So Chris Packham and David Attenborough, for example, have been promoting a plant-based diet.
This is actually a really important question, because when it comes to environmentalists, when it comes to scientists, let's say, when you've got data, stats, facts, people will listen. They can kind of absorb that information and find it, there's more sort of validation for them, you know, when you think of the general public. But when you have people like David Attenborough and Chris Packham, they have such a massive following. People are going to listen, and perhaps they're not going to feel threatened. You're not necessarily sort of blaming them for anything or threatening them or their ideologies. Whereas I think when it comes to vegans and activists, we're quite stigmatized, unfortunately, and everyone's different. Everyone is different in how we can interpret, accept, absorb, filter information. And I think it's really important. There's lots of different bridges of communication, and environmentalism is able to deliver that to some people, and there's no problem there. Whereas these particular people might not be able to tolerate veganism or activism initially, but perhaps the environmentalists and science may be able to build that bridge, so later on they start to make more positive changes. And I think it's really important. I mean, I feel like I've kind of had a taste in everything. Obviously I'm vegan, an activist, environmentalist, and I found value in everything, absolutely everything. Going to slaughterhouses with the Save movement, I found value in doing that. I found it reached lots of people. Outreach work, lots of value in doing that. I mean, if you look at any social movement, it's ignited predominantly by anger or some strong emotion. So obviously it works. If you look at even the suffragettes, you're telling me they weren't angry. You're telling me they didn't protest. Of course they did. They did everything that all activists, animal rights activists, are doing today. And there's a massive place for it, and it does work. There's so much value in it. But there's also got to be scope for the people that aren't going to tolerate or listen to that. So I think environmentalists such as, David Attenborough, I think it's really important.
Do you think the catalyst as to why they're now promoting a plant-based diet, is that because they've read the science themselves, Chris Packham and David Attenborough, for example?
Yeah, because they're in it constantly. They're being presented with the evidence constantly. Even if they wanted to deny it, they couldn't. So, science is an amazing thing, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, it's broad. It's not like 1, 2, 3. It's a very broad subject. It affects so many different things. There's so many different layers to it. But because they're experts, they're doing it full time. You can't deny that the oceans are being destroyed because of humans and eating animal products. And do you know what I mean? It's after a while, these sort of overwhelming facts will just stick with people.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, people are more likely to, if you just look at David Attenborough and plastic, if you just choose one topic, one area, if you look at plastic and what he's done and how many people he's reached and how many people are making changes now because of that, it's astounding. So if one person has that amount of influence, that power, even, of course it's power, isn't it? That is amazing. So of course there's value in it, and him and Chris obviously promoting a plant-based diet. They're quite careful in how they promote it, aren't they?
Yeah,
they are promoting it. They have to.
Yeah, because it's a no-brainer. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately. The reality is it is a no-brainer to reduce animal products to help the environment. It's not really a debate anymore. It's just factual. True environmentalists. I haven't met any environmentalists who are promoting animal agriculture anymore.
When it comes to, I think, veganism, promoting a plant-based diet, if you think about why these environmentalists and scientists, why they initially went into that area, it's their love of nature, it's their love of the environment, and they can see what is the main cause of its destruction. So it's obvious they're going to eventually, it's taken a while, hasn't it, for the likes of David Attenborough. I'm obviously a big follower of him and his work, of course I am, but it's taken him a long time. And it's just like you said, it's so obvious. It's and he knows that he can have this impact as well. And he's quite, how old is he now? He's probably
90 something.
Yeah, so he's probably, I know that when I interviewed Jane Goodall, and I know she says this a lot as well because I hear it in lots of her interviews, she said, she wants to do as much as she can with the time that she has left. Yeah. And I think it's the same for most people. I know I feel that, and I'm, in my 30s, and I feel like I haven't got enough time. I want to get everything sort of out there now, and change as many minds as possible and hearts as possible. And I think environmentalists are at that point now because we're at a tipping point. So you're going to see the likes of those people that have a big following using it really positively, and obviously promoting a plant-based diet is the best thing that you can do.
Would you like to play another track?
Could you play Street Spirit, Radiohead?
So that was Radiohead with Street Spirit. And we're still here with Abbie Woodbridge, filmmaker and educator. And we talked about quite a few topics today, but one thing that I'd like you to sort of top up on is, I was wondering, what are the takeaways, sort of the ideas and insights you'd like people to take away from your film?
There's so many takeaways, really, because my main intention was to change perception, and there's so many different ways of doing that, as we talked about earlier. But with the wolf, again, as I mentioned earlier, they're a very villainized creature, as are many animals, and we have the media to thank for that, and the fact that predatory animals, yes, they are carnivores and they kill other animals, and it's hard for human beings to understand that, really. And they have been villainized, especially, again, using the wolf as an example. If you look at how my first sort of interest in wolves, werewolves, and the mystical side of what a wolf actually is, and those I guess my perception back then was very warped, really. And you can see how easily it happens with the media. If you look at sharks, if you look at, well, even just looking at sharks alone, and you look at films like Jaws and all the films that are made about sharks, it's unbelievable, because we don't hear anything else. The media will release, well, it's all propaganda, isn't it? And we don't necessarily hear the realities, and it's a terrible pity, because it does, as a result, leave a very demonized creature, and we categorize them, unfortunately, and our perceptions are warped. You see, we love dogs, we love kangaroos, we love cuddly, sweet things, and then, yeah, I mean, the wolf obviously has a lot more fans than the wolf used to have. Yes, again, you can thank the media to that in some respects, like Twilight and other films that promote them, again, to be this amazing, magical being. But it's not healthy, really, is it, in the long run? So villainization with the film, I just wanted to break it down, and that's why I titled the film Wolves Unmasked, because it just meant that we could actually see the wolf as a wolf, what the wolf truly is, and see, because I see the wolf as a symbol of nature, really. And it's so important when you look at these animals, especially predatory animals, and what they represent. It's actually very important, and what they actually do, the life that they take, but actually the life that they give as well. And I really hope that the documentary does kind of undress that, and address it as well as undress it, and kind of change perceptions. And I kind of sometimes don't like saying that, because it sounds a little bit pushy, to put it simply. I don't want to come across like that, but I think it's more influencing people and providing the right types of information, being scientific, and just, I hope, changing perceptions in a positive way.
Absolutely. And a few things that are jumping out at me is that the demonization of animals, wolves and sharks, more people die from car crashes than they do from sharks. And also, humans aren't amphibious, so really we're actually entering their world, their do you know what I mean? So if we weren't entering their land, or underwater, then we wouldn't have any shark deaths. So it is, and then you were talking about that you didn't want to sort of be controlling people's perceptions. From my perspective, what you're doing is you're showing people the facts, and you're breaking down the conditioning. You're sort of going to the opposite of what the conditioning has done, and said, these are the facts. This is what's happening to the wolves. These are what wolves really are, not what they are portrayed to be, the myth, the legend, the demonized animals. Even the word wolf, personally, to me, has like a trigger of negativity. purely just because of the conditioning that I've got. I always connect them to vicious and attacking and violent and fighting. But that is constructed, and that's what your documentary will do, is help me and others break down that conditioning and focus on what they really are. They're one animal of millions, and along with your Animal Educate, you can introduce human beings to these other species, to these amazing facts about how wonderfully and awesome these other animals on our planet, the ones that share this planet with us, are. And yeah, I would absolutely say that you're not controlling what people think. You're showing people information, and then they can make an adult sort of constructive view from it. Without that information, they've been conditioned.
Thank you. Well, I really hope that that's what the documentary does. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a level of control there somewhere, because I'm providing lots of different types of information, but how people interpret that is kind of up to them. But wolves aren't what people perceive them to be. And I guess overall, I want to balance perception. You've got these two kind of extreme ways of thinking with these animals, and I want to balance it. I want it to be in the middle, because I don't think either of them are healthy. I've certainly been on one side of it, and I want to give out the right information. You mentioned sharks, and it just something just came to mind. They don't actually even eat people. That's the thing. They take a bite just to sort of get a gist of how much sort of fat's there, but unfortunately, because their bites are pretty much 80 to whatever % of the time lethal, that ends up killing people. They don't actually eat people, so they'll always take a bite just to check and to see how much.
More demonization. Again,
more, because you won't hear that in the media. You just don't hear that. We hear the worst of the. We hear like an isolated incident above zillions of perhaps positive incidents, and it's exactly what's happened with wolves. But if you do the research yourself, it's astounding. If you've got that information there, and this is the problem, you need to be quite objective with it, and people don't necessarily or aren't able to do that, because people listen to the sort of sensationalism and they absorb that better. They want stories over science more than anything, and that's the problem. And in some cases, but the whole point of the documentary is to balance perception. That is my intention, because there's two extremes, and neither one is particularly healthy or helpful for the wolf. So I'm really hoping that by showing the wolf, the true nature of the wolf character, and I guess talking to lots of different specialists that have worked with the wolf in many different capacities, I'm hoping that sort of comes across, and I can basically unmask them.
Ideal. And with the work that you do, where's the best place to find the other work that you do?
So my website has more information about Wolves Unmasked, and it has a page dedicated to Animal Educate, so you can access all my videos there. And the probably best place to contact me is via email or social media, so you can find out more. Pretty much my website, that's my base.
And what's your website?
It's www.lupine-media.co.uk.
Awesome. And what I'll also do is I'll add links to all of Abbie's work underneath these videos for the online links as well.
Thank you.
Cheers for your time, Abbie.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's not a problem at all. Hope everyone has a lovely day, and I'll catch you on the next show. Peace out.
vegan.
1, 2,
3.